Hi everyone. I just want to share the assessment that we're using in junior school, the reasons behind why this assessment has been chosen, and I guess recommendations for how that can be consistent into the senior school. So, of course, there's been a lot of change as we've seen with COVID, etc., etc. But coming back to our mission and our vision is what drives everything we do. This is what we're about, our purpose. And we'll come back and visit that. Everyone's familiar with it.
We wanted to talk about 21st century education. We are living through an educational revolution. The pace of change is staggering. Schools, regions, entire countries are turning education on its head and redefining the experiences of students and of teachers. The impact is felt by millions of children and their families around the world. Let's consider for a moment the world in which they live. A world with so much knowledge it's hard to grasp. People are creating 2,000 new websites every hour. They are uploading 35 hours of video every minute and watching 2 billion YouTube videos every day. By the time they leave school, teenagers average nearly 1,000 Facebook friends. They connect with people thousands of miles away as if they were in the same room. They consume, produce, and communicate information in previously unimaginable ways. They truly are the children of a globalized world. And where are they heading as they grow up? To a hyper-connected world with more people and fewer resources. A busy and competitive world full of uncertainties. A workforce that is more mobile and better qualified than ever before. And careers that span multiple jobs, positions, and skill sets, some of which haven't been invented yet. In response, education leaders are making big changes, building 21st century skills, using enabling technologies, and personalizing learning to engage students in diverse and creative ways. In South Korea, schools are switching to digital textbooks so students can study anytime and anywhere, with online hours recognized as school attendance. In Denmark, students are using the internet while taking exams. They can access any site they like, even Facebook, as long as they don't message each other or use email. In the USA, ultra-personalized learning approaches allow students to create their own individual schedules. Their interests and performance are logged daily to generate playlists of learning options, with teachers' time freed up to mentor and supervise students. Learning can happen anywhere and everywhere. That's why some Australian schools are pushing learning beyond school walls, where internships with local organisations are a fundamental part of each student's learning plan. Distance learning programs are connecting seriously disengaged students with online learning communities and personal mentors to help them rediscover their love for learning. The opportunities for 21st century education are immense. These examples point the way to ensuring that tomorrow's workers, parents, and citizens are more creative problem solvers, better communicators, and lifelong learners. To make sure that change happens on a massive scale, we need to make big changes. That's why we've designed a new Australian curriculum online, supported by interactive, constantly updated digital resources, structured around students' and teachers' needs. And it's why we now have national professional standards for teachers and principals that make sure they meet the needs of 21st century learners. But that's just the beginning. Join us as we broaden this debate and connect educational pioneers and thought leaders across Australia and the world.
Okay, so a very powerful video. That video was released on YouTube in 2014, so 7 years ago, and we know how much we've progressed since then. So there's more and more use of technology. We've seen that with COVID, but the big point coming through there is change, and how that change relates to us at BISC is through the IB learner profile. These skills have never been more important for students going into jobs that, as the video said there, may not have been created yet. Okay, to look at the assessment, I just want to really quickly go over this. approach to education was behavioural approach. The old curriculum, the national curriculum for England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, as you can see in the top right there, the picture of the old curriculum. It wasn't all of that. Of course, it had different approaches in it, but it was predominantly sat within the behavioural approach. And there's nothing wrong with the behavioural approach, but we have to have an understanding of the behavioural approach and understand the balance of all approaches. Some subjects, such as maths, research shows that when it's taught through the behavioural approach, it's most effective. So quickly, just reading through there, oldest and most dominant, linear, teacher-controlled, command-style teaching. There's separate subjects, surface nature of knowledge acquired. So learn this for the exam, spit it out, and then forget it. It's really practical. It's efficient, cost efficient. You don't need, the teachers don't have to be as skilled and qualified. It helps basically a nation's economy more productive. It's a top-down directive, history of being unsuccessful in developed countries associated with quantitative data. Moving along, so the new curriculum that came out, here it says September 2013, but we'll say 2014 in England, and that's the Key Stage 1 and 2 framework document. So with that, it then it didn't sit predominantly in the behavioural approach, it sat within the constructivist, predominantly within the constructivist, this holistic, especially in the early years, understanding this emotional, social, physical, spiritual, and cognitive areas, play-based learning, open-ended materials, projects, exploring the environment. So lots of these IB learner profile values coming through. It's a journey, it's a process rather than the end product, an end result. It's more understanding of how we learn, metacognition, thinking about how we can improve as learners. Careful planning for learning process to meet the needs of the learner. And we're seeing that with documents such as Tapestry that the foundation stage are using, looking at where they need to target to make sure they cover all areas of that learning. A teacher is a facilitator. Group work centered around problem solving and project work. Okay. Now, also Vygotsky's zone of proximal development sits within the constructivist, where we've got the child and we keep challenging them to develop, not giving them, not feeding them, but carefully and tactfully progressing them through the questions that we use so that they can stretch themselves. And we've seen that with coaching in teaching. When you coach someone, you're in a way counseling and helping them solve the problems they have for themselves and to inspire themselves. So again, as I'll say, repeat, it's about balance, but subjects such as your humanities sit really well in the constructivist approach, sit really well in this inquiry-based approach. Okay, so understanding, planning, acting, reflecting. They sit really well. Health education, geography, English at times when it connects with the other areas that you're looking at in genres. These sit really well. You're also we've seen this with science projects. Okay, inquiry-based approach and relates to the 21st century education. Moving along, critical. So we've seen this with organisations at schools such as Students Without Borders, who are inspired by the global goals, sustainable development goals, and in particular Goal 6, for example. So we're looking at charity work and raising funds to help various communities within Cairo. This is the critical approach. They're reflective. They're conscious of what's happening. They're looking at where people are suffering. They're trying to make a better world. Okay, so they're doing something that's about action. And critical is another approach. And as I said, it's about having balance across these approaches. This is just as important as we look at assessment. It's the story behind why we've chosen what we've chosen. The national curriculum in England provides pupils with an introduction to the essential knowledge they need to be educated citizens. It introduces pupils to the best that has been thought and said, and helps engender an appreciation of human creativity and achievement. Again, you can see IB learner profile coming in. The national curriculum is just one element in the education of every child. We know that. As international teachers and we go on trips and holidays, we know that that's an educational experience. There is time and space in the school day and in each week, term and year, to range beyond the national curriculum specifications, extracurriculum activities, ASAs. The national curriculum provides an outline of core knowledge around which teachers can develop exciting and stimulating lessons to promote the development of pupils' knowledge, understanding skills as part of the wider school curriculum. And this is why in the junior school, we have to be flexible with the teachers that make up a team, with the children in that year group. And if they decide that they want to change their topic because they think it's going to be a better experience for that child using the experience of the teachers, using what's happening in the world, then we have to go with that. That's part of the new curriculum. The old curriculum was very structured in that behavioural approach. Here's your scheme of work. You have to teach the Great Fire of London on this particular day in this particular week. Whereas this one is, do you know what? There's been a tidal wave. You want to learn more about extreme Earth, go for it because it's relevant and it's going to help the children learn more. So that's how these approaches come into play with our planning. And of course, with any planning, the assessment, because our assessment drives our planning. Assessment for learning. So what is the purpose of education? Why do children go to school? As we saw in the curriculum, it's about developing practical skills, strengthening productivity of the society, but also on the video, preparing and dealing with the future, 21st century learning, developing the child, the holistic learning, personalised learning, again, IB learner profile, critiquing society, equity and social justice. So we see that critical approach coming in, and we see that happening at school with the various charity groups and work going on, and introducing students to the best that has been thought and said. And that's actually stated in the latest national curriculum. So we have to address all these areas as we look at our planning and what we're covering. Okay, the Ofsted Chief Inspector more recently, relating this back to assessment, said, "I believe we have a vital role in balancing the accountability system. What we measure through inspection can counteract some of the inevitable pressure created by performance tables and floor standards." So what she's talking about there, floor standards, performance tables, the traditional Ofsted inspections, and also referring to testing, SATs tests, and how we rank schools. Rather than just intensifying the focus of data, which traditionally is quantitative data, Ofsted inspections must explore what is behind the data, asking how results have been achieved. Inspections then are about looking underneath the bonnet to be sure that a good quality education, one that genuinely meets pupils' needs, is not being compromised. So it's about understanding the story behind that school. Not saying that school has failed because it hasn't reached as expected, but understanding the children in that school and their experiences. Perhaps it's predominantly made up of children who are refugees and have only been in the country for 6 months, and they've made extremely good progress. So what we're looking at then is pupil voice, teacher voice, the story behind the school. This is qualitative data. So standardized tests, quantitative, and then the story behind it, qualitative. So there we have on the left, our traditional quantitative data, and also in schools, though a lot of quantitative data was collected, but understanding our observations of lessons, the environment and break times, pupil voice, interviews, focus group and semi-structured, and also teacher voice. Looking at the books, document analysis and school policies, community voice, and then triangulation, that word used, where we're looking at a number of different data gathering techniques to strengthen our judgments, clarify meaning. So it's not just quantitative, it's also qualitative. And this, for data gathering, that's what assessment is. It's gathering data to see where we're at and then to look at how we're going to get to our next point, our next steps. We also have to, Ofsted warned that we have to be careful of gimmicks, that we have to use evidence-based research. So when all schools are getting programs in, um, or even professional development, it's a big decision. You need to understand where your school sits within its approaches and how it's going about things, and is that complementing and strengthening the program? So evidence-based research, Ofsted explicitly pushed evidence-based research in 2017, and it's here to stay. So, understanding about how learning happens, we need time for reflection. We need to understand the psychological perspectives. We've seen this plasticity coming into play. We've seen what people do in rewards. We've seen the cognitive and metacognition, understanding how we think and how to improve, understanding the hidden messages of the way we deliver things, psychoanalytic, and also the humanistic, empowering the individual to be the best they can be. Empowering, and this is not just for understanding students, but for understanding teachers. And then these educational approaches reflect teachers' belief about how children learn. Why does a teacher teach in that way? Why does a teacher use that pedagogy? Why does that work for them? Why do they believe in it? And your understanding about how children learn and how they're supported by the families, communities, and educators. So looking at that story, looking at the IB learner profile, and not at this very moment, but working towards the end of the year, looking at how that's important also to assess. So here we have aspects of learning and relating to the IB learner profile, things like values such as communication, reflection, exploration, energy, creativity, resilience, curiosity, and courage. These areas, how is the student or child using these in the everyday to help improve their learning? And on the past analysis from the last 4 years, it showed that this belief in themselves and this identification reflection is one of our key next steps for improvement. So we have the learning process. How do our drivers, through all our IB learning and the messages on the internet, message on the internet, it's about, BISC is about community, it's about our values, and it's about our metacognition and our thinking, and thinking about thinking and improving and inspiring ourselves as learners. There's our IB learner profile. We're very familiar with that. I'll keep moving along. Here's what in the junior school we're looking at developing and really truly implementing this. So how is the mission implemented in everything we do? So looking at our own student and peer reflections, how are these used in our learning? Teacher feedback, dojo points and reward systems, and also assessed on our report card. This is how our mission and vision is truly implemented throughout our school. This is what we're about. So we have to not only assess academically, but assess holistic learning. Here's an example of layers of learning. So we've got 3 layers, and just to help pupils identify where they're at, not to be overused and lose its value, but every now and then with self-reflection, helping that student with those IB learner values and using metacognition, or thinking about thinking and thinking about learning, to reflect. We do this all the time as teachers. Teacher reflection, being reflective practitioners. We're always thinking, oh, that worked really well. That didn't work too well. I need to learn from that. And also having then feedback from drop-ins and learning observations. So everything we look at, do we have to do it? Very much so. There's a lot of research showing how important assessment for learning and improving and making next steps. How are we doing at the moment? We're using some of the things I'm about to propose. We're already using. It's great. We've got data collected from years. Perhaps it can be a little bit more purposeful in our analysis and feedback and next steps. So where are we going? Where are we right now? How do we get there? Can we do it better? That's what we'll look at, and that's hopefully what we can do. Talking to some teachers, getting the introductory surveys from teachers. There were some issues with the purpose of it. We would do a test and we never hear any more about it. So that's not being used for its purpose. And also the test, there were many. So I propose that we do more with less. And using that assessment for learning, that formative, using it to drive our planning, using it to drive our next steps, and what's being completed and improvement. And also the consistency across year levels and across then within the year level and across year levels and across key stages. So here's some areas that we can improve in. Moving along. From the recent PENTA inspections that myself and Eileen did, there is no requirement for marking or assessment from Ofsted or other inspectors. It is entirely down to the school. We have the autonomy, but we know it's important. And the important question is, what impact does the marking or assessment have? What impact? We're putting all this effort in of the children doing a particular, for example, paper. It's being marked. Sometimes it's marked by the teachers. Then we're looking at it and reflecting. What impact is it having? So where is the learner going? Where is the learner right now? How does the learner get there? And then that success and progress. Right, so in maths, something that's really purposeful and working well and getting positive feedback from the teachers, even though initially perhaps they had to adjust to the program, the assessment, they can see the purpose for it. Summative assessment in maths. And we're having half-termly and then also end of year, as you can see here. And straight away from the half-termly, we can see the green being correct, red incorrect, orange got 1 out of 2 marks. And straight away you can look at child 12 and go across, you get their score, and it's easy to identify how they're going. Then on the analysis, I can see here using inverse operations is lower, 40%. Straight away, okay, it's a bit lower in my class. A little bit more information here.
Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to analyse and look at the results from the recent maths assessments that we completed. So first of all, you click on Power Maths, then you can go to Assessments and click on Power Maths again. Then you have to select your class and you have to select on Autumn Term 1. And as you can see, you will see your class results shown. Now what you can see is that you can look at the all-school average, which is comparing it to the UK, and then you can look at the average for your class, which is shown here. So here you can see mine are slightly above average, which is good. Topic analysis, if you click on that button, it will show you how your class got on compared to the average for each of the questions shown, and that's a whole class analysis. You have the option to print those as well. If you wanted to look at individual children, you click on their name on the left hand side, and then you can look at the topic analysis again, clicking on here, and it will show you the average for all the pupils and then for that child in particular and how they compare. So that will give you an idea in terms of your to put on Classroom Monitor and for your reports. For year 1, you will have to do that slightly different. So when you click on your academic year, year 2, not year 1, you will have to click on the academic year 2020 because you did the end of year paper. So, but in principle, it's the same thing. So you just have to change those drop-down boxes first, and then you can have access to exactly what was shown. When we complete the end of term 1 results again, these will be inputted into here so we can see progression. I hope that's useful. Please let me know if you have any questions at all.
Okay, so Power Maths there is showing the progression and also attainment for that half term. What's really good about Power Maths is that it's assessing what the children have covered. which is what assessment's about. It's seeing how they're learning. Sometimes the tests used in the past may not have matched following the new curriculum and being flexible with your planning and meeting these exciting topics with the children. Sometimes there might have been a test that wasn't actually meeting its purpose. It wasn't assessing what the children had covered. So there was no purpose. And that's something we have to be really careful of. End of year, yes, by the end of year for maths and English, of course, they will have covered everything. We've planned carefully to make sure we cover all our objectives and key performing indicators. So yes, by the end of the year, yes, you can use that. But for ones used during the year, it doesn't always marry up. It did with the old curriculum pre-2014. So we're going to use progress test in maths. It's a GL education, GL assessments for the end of year. What's really good about the progress test for maths and progress test for English with GL assessments is that it can be combined with the CAT4 to measure ability with attainment. Okay, because the CAT4 shows the strengths and weaknesses of that particular child. So then marries up with their performance. Traditionally in the school, they had progress in understanding maths, the old PUMA with rising stars, and that's been replaced with power maths, as I said, that is measuring exactly what they've been learning. So it has purpose and it also offers consistency. So Emma Paget chose power maths, looked at the issues with maths across the school last year and went with power maths, which is aligned with White Rose Maths, which is a really good program and well recognised in England. And that's working really well with our assessments. So we've replaced Puma with Power Maths. Power Maths also offers an end of year, which we can use and look at the progress with Power Maths and compare with our progress test maths, which has been collected. The other good point about progress test maths is that the data has been collected from 4 or 5 years. So the strengths of progress through maths, it's similar to SATs. So our SATs in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, so the end of Year 2 and the end of Year 6, our SATs tests measure our arithmetic and our reasoning skills. And that's what progress through maths does. But it doesn't just do it for year 6. It does it here for Year 3, 4, 5 and 6, Key Stage 2. And that's where we can use the particular level, so level 8, 9, 10, 11, and it's similar and developmentally appropriate SATs, and we collect that data. So we're going to continue to do that. It measures your students' mathematical skills and knowledge in areas such as number, shape, data handling, and algebra, as well as their mathematical reasoning and problem-solving skills. It's statistically robust. We'll standardise on a UK sample of over 45,000 students with benchmarks verified every year based on analysis from over 500,000 students. And it supports school improvement initiatives by showing the relative performance of your students compared to national benchmarks. Testing year on year enables you to track individual and group progress. Transition tests provide an accurate profile of your students and set a baseline from which to monitor progress. To compare ability with current attainment, our combination reports combine data with CAT4. With these tests, these valuable reports allow you to identify students who are underachieving or exceeding expectations in maths, guiding interventions. So there's a lot of positives. This is, in research terms, it's valid and it's reliable. And that's why we're sticking with progress through maths. So the key point there also is a dedicated transition test is available designed specifically for the start of secondary school. So that can be used. And there's some more information that I just read through. Mathematical content knowledge is similar to the arithmetic in SATs, and understanding and applying mathematical processes is similar to the reasoning skills in SATs. So we've got not only year 6 now, we've got year 5, 4, 3, where we can take an end of year test paper and use that to not be the one and only assessment, but we should find that it supports power maths and supports teacher judgments. Teacher judgments made from discussions, observations, and the work being done in class, evidenced in their books. So plenty of assessment in maths. So there's our Key Stage 2 arithmetic and reasoning, and Key Stage 1 arithmetic and reasoning. Right, now English. So for reading comprehension is normally one SATs test, and then grammar, punctuation and spelling is another. So there's our Key Stage 1 reading, grammar, punctuation and spelling, and Key Stage 2 reading, grammar, punctuation and spelling. So we're going to again stick with progress test in English, PTE, with GL assessments. It measures your students' knowledge, understanding and application of technical English skills, spelling, grammar and punctuation, exactly the same as SATs, and reading comprehension, exactly the same as SATs, using age-appropriate fiction and information texts. So again, year 3, 4, 5 and 6, 8, level 8, 9, 10, 11, and it goes also into year 7, 8, 9 and 10. Level 12, and that 11T is available as a transition test at the start of the year in year 7 and must be administered in the first half term of secondary school. There is no end of year test for year 7 students. Okay, so they have set it up so that it can be used as a transition. So it measures your students' knowledge, understanding and application of technical English skills, spelling, grammar and punctuation, reading comprehension, read that earlier. Why use the progress test in English? Again, statistically robust, standardised on a UK sample of over 49,000 students with benchmarks verified every year based on analysis from over 500,000 students. What does it tell us? Support school improvement initiatives by showing the relative performance of your students compared to national benchmarks. Testing year on year enables you to track individual and group progress. Transition tests provide an accurate profile of your students and set a baseline from which to monitor progress. To compare ability with current attainment, our combination reports combine data from Cat4 with progress tests in English. So, what I like about progress tests in English and progress tests in maths is that we have SATs tests in maintained schools in England, and also some independent schools use those. And what those SATs tests do, and these types of standardized tests, is that they are used by in the OECD comparisons. So they're valid, they're reliable, and they're used to compare. And the next closest thing for us is this particular type of assessment with GL assessments, where we can do a similar thing to SATs and look at where our children are in comparison to other students. And that would be end of year. So not only for year 6 at the end of Key Stage 2, but the end of year 5, 4, and 3. So there's some more. Again, a dedicated transition test is available, designed specifically for the start of secondary school. So there's no reason why that cannot be used beyond Key Stage 2 into Key Stage 3. The next form of assessment that we're looking at in English is the writing assessment. So the traditional levels used are associated with the old curriculum. In the new curriculum, in 2016, 2017, they came up with teacher assessment frameworks used at the end of Key Stage 1 and end of Key Stage 2. So here we have Key Stage 1, and the children are grouped into working towards the expected standard, working at the expected standard, and working at greater depth. So we have this standard. We have examples of writing, which teachers go through and look at as model work. And as they cover their genres, which they cover throughout their learning in the junior school, and are spread out, the genres are spread out throughout, the writing genres are spread out throughout Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. Sometimes they're revisited, but there's a wide, comprehensive group of genres covered. So as they do that, they look at a sample of writing and then they moderate with other teachers, and they've got the standard there. This is how it happens in England. It's teacher judgment and using the skills of the teachers in the school. We could then combine with another independent school if we needed to, but if it's done correctly, there really isn't any need. If you look at that level and look at this criteria and we discuss that, it can easily, with the expertise in our junior school, be done to a very high standard. So English writing, using the teacher assessment framework known as TAF at the end of Key Stage 1 and at the end of Key Stage 2. So that's how we're going. That's already Katie has begun implementing the TAF. And Lisa will also be looking at this and throughout this year. So there are examples, and there's an example of, for example, a short story. We can also use moderation in Key Stage 2 for writing is the main one, but it can be used for science. And in Key Stage 1, it can be used for writing, maths and science, but also English reading is another strong point. It can be used for reading. That moderation, having time in our PLD, whether it's during PLD times with the PLD team or if it's time used during briefings. So then, dropping down now to FS1, the entry point 3-year-olds. And what we're okay to have a look at what's happening in FS, starting at the earliest stage of our school. We have the reception in FS2, reception to a baseline assessment, and that's continued for a few years now. We've also introduced tapestry, which is a form of gathering evidence and using that assessment to help plan for next steps in the teaching experience. So there's an example there of reception on entry activity booklet using the new development matters and also the early years framework goals. Right, so the end of year 1 and 2, we're looking at having a phonics screening check in both the end of year 1 and end of year 2. There are thresholds offered in England, which we can look at, but as long as the children, we want to aim for that by the end of year 1, but realise that year 2, end of year 2 might be more realistic. Also realising the importance of the early years, working up from the early years. So the behavioural approach, which I talked about earlier, relates to the old curriculum, is connected to a top-down directive. So we're influenced by the senior school influences what's going on in the junior school. But it's what the research shows is that it's not through, it's through forming partnerships on an equal basis, working collegially, not bottom up or top down, but rather horizontally, and understanding the developmentally appropriateness of and differences between different sectors of the school and having a balanced approach. Right, so if we look at the early years foundation stage framework, 3 prime areas, thinking of how this relates to IB Learner Profile and also our priorities as a school. Communication and language is 1, physical development is 2, and personal, social and emotional development is 3. There are 3 prime areas in the early years foundation stage. Then we have literacy, maths, understanding the world, and expressive arts and design. We already use PASS, Pupil Attitudes to Self and School Survey. That will continue. That's very helpful. And also realising that balance that good teachers select, mix and match and combine teacher-centred and student-centred instructional techniques, that balance of approaches. That's what we're told by research. 21st century lifelong learning skills, these aren't new to anyone, but it also again highlights holistic and the importance of IB Learner Profile. Communication skills, numeracy skills, ICT skills, thinking skills and problem solving, self-management and competitive skills, study and work skills, social skills, physical skills, aesthetic skills. How do we assess those areas? which do very strongly relate to our mission and vision. How are we assessing that our mission and vision is implemented in our school? So we're looking at the context. The planning has to be within our context and suit our context. Our intent, which assessment feeds. Then also our implementation and understanding various approaches and different strategies and models and how we're using that. And then the impact, assessing that impact and again, driving our planning. And using formative and summative, qualitative and quantitative methods. Right, so here's an overview. Maths, we're looking at the baseline assessment on entry. We're also looking at the tapestry ongoing formative assessment. In year 4, we've successfully, with the Power Maths, Emma's also driven the Times Tables Rockstars, which has been very popular amongst children and teachers. In UK, they have a year 4 Times Tables test, or they've just begun, and it's going to begin as soon as possible. They've had practice runs. We can look at something similar because a lot of our children are doing really well with that. It could be to our advantage to capture how well they're doing. Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 Power Maths, termly assessments, end of year. It's purposeful and it's consistent. So that's addressed those issues raised by teachers. It's making impact. And then progress tests in maths, standardised tests, similar to SATS tests, looking at arithmetic and reasoning, and we can do it from year 3, year 4, year 5 and year 6, and it can also go into Key Stage 3. It can be combined with Cat 4 to marry up ability and performance. English, again, baseline assessment on entry in FS2 and tapestry. Key Stage 1 phonics screening test at the end of year for year 1 and year 2 as assessment to feed our phonics program. Key Stage 1 and 2 writing, looking at that teacher assessment framework, moderating, it's ongoing. And then, it can be summative at the end of Key Stage 2, but it's ongoing from year 3 up. And at the end of year 2, again, it can be summative, but year 1 and year 2, it's ongoing and formative. And then progress test in English, looking at standardised tests similar to SATs that will operate from year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, and is developmentally appropriate, and will offer us another sample of progression and also attainment, and can be combined with Cat 4. Finally, measuring progress using Engage. Here's something that I've just put together quickly. We've got year 5, 6, 7 and 8. Here's year 5, 6, 7 and 8. The numbers, 1, working significantly below, working below 2, at is 3, working above is 4, and working significantly above is 5. So when we see an increase like this, we can see that there's progress being made for the English attainment average from year 5, year 6, year 7 and year 8. Here for maths, year 5, year 6, year 7 and 8, it's going down. We can see that it's gone from 3 at to working below. So it's not progressing, and then we can ask questions there. Maybe the child needs extra support. Maybe the teacher needs support. Thanks for listening. All the best.